This is SimSafari. It's a game from 1998, and I think every nature nerd should play this at least once. Let's see what we can get up to. Hello there all you absolutely magnificent people, and welcome back to another episode of An Ecologist Plays, where we talk about nature while playing games. My name is Will, I'm an ecologist by training, and this is a blast from the past. This is SimSafari. My word, this game was released in the late 1990s by Maxis, and well, it is a little bit difficult to get a hold of, but if you can get a hold of, voila, it is one of the best simulation games out there. So for those of you that are not familiar with this game, it is set in Africa. You are designing a national park and the campsite to go along with it, and then you're also hiring some of the local people to work in your camp and to drive the vehicles around. And what we are going to do is we are going to make a very realistic, ecologically speaking, national park. So without any further ado, let's jump right in, shall we? I'm just going to randomize the map a few times. I think this is quite a good one, so let us jump into that one. And we are going to start with no plants or animals. And this is it. And if we just look at it, I mean, you can see here we've got a nice water body all along here. We've got the ecologist's house over there, and then we've got nothing. This park is completely empty. We also have our campsite here, which has the reception, and that is it. And then we also have our village. And at the moment, as things are here, there are a few huts around here. I don't see any wells. The inhabitants have got their crops over there, corn and so, and well, until they have a fence around this camp here, there's a good chance elephants will trample their crops over here. So, how are we going to do this? Well, first of all, we are going to establish our vegetation, because the basis of any good park would be the botanical aspect. So let us start. I think the idea is in this open area over here, away from the water, we are going to go for mostly grasses. And then along this lake over here, we are going to be planting some trees. And then this section over here, we're going to have a big bit of a semi-open woodland. Okay, so we're going to have a nice mixture of grasses and trees along here. But before we do anything else, let us actually start building a road that goes through this park. But since this is the 90s, and the AI of the game is not necessarily the best, you know, the vehicles will very easily drive off the road if you have any bends. We are going to have this nice straight road going straight down here. And we're also going to have two roads leading up from this road to the other parts of the park. And there we go, the basic road infrastructure done. Now the road here will serve two purposes. Of course, the vehicles will be driving along it, but secondly, what roads also do in this game is they stop fire. They act as fire breaks. Now many people think that, you know, fire breaks are there to actually stop the fire. Not really true. Fire breaks, yes, very often are more open areas, but it doesn't stop the fire. It may slow down the fire, but what it actually does is it allows firefighters a place to work from to try and fight a fire. So if this is the nice fire break over here and the fire is coming from this side over here, you can either start a back burn from this side and actually burn towards the fire so that when the fire does reach the point where you are burning, there's no more fuel left to burn and the fire kind of fizzles out. Or you can wait for the fire to get to you where you are at the fire break, and then you fight the fire along this fire break here. But the fire break doesn't actually stop the fire. In the game here, however, if the fire comes from the north here, it is going to stop at this road. It's not going to jump across the road, even though in reality it will be very easy to do that. So now that we've got our road infrastructure done, we are going to plant some plants. And this area over here will get a whole bunch of grasses. And we're just going to put the grasses in kind of all willy-nilly all over the show. And we've got three grass species here. We've got our red oat grass here, Themida trihandra. We've got love grass, which is an Eragrostis species, and then we've got couch grass or lawn grass or Bermuda grass, Cynodon dactylon right over here. This is a grass that I'm actually highly allergic to, so I am not a very big fan of it. Alright, but these three grass species, we're going to start a few nodes of these, and then they are going to spread very easily from these patches. And this is very similar to something we actually do when we rehabilitate degraded rangelands. Instead of trying to plant vegetation everywhere, you actually start in little nodes, and you allow the vegetation there to really establish well, and then they spread from there, because these grasses here, once they actually cover this plot over here, it's not going to be a monospecific stand. It's not going to just be one species here. There are three grass species here that can now result in a nice grassland actually spreading all over the place with more than just one species. It would be very expensive to take this entire park and plant grasses everywhere. So what we are doing is we're just plopping down a few spots, and we are allowing nature and time to do the rest. Now along this lake over here, we're also going to plant some sedges. This one here is known as tiger nut. If I remember correctly, it has a little underground tuber, not a nut, but a tuber that actually has little stripes on it, kind of resembling a tiger, and you can make a plant milk from it. And then one more patch of grasses. All three of these grass species are palatable to game animals, so to grazers, they will be coming and eating any of these three grass species. Bermuda grass, quite nice and tasty, relatively short grain grass. Then the red oat grass, very, very tasty, very palatable. Grazers love eating them. And then the Eragrostis, the lava grass, not as great, but still many species of Eragrostis are quite palatable. So quite a few grazers will also go for them. Along our lake over here, we're also going to plant some winter thorns. Now this tree is a relative of the acacias, of the thorn trees that we have in Africa. And you can kind of see that. And it actually was in the acacia genus as well, before the name got changed. But it's called winter thorn because in the areas where it grows, most acacias actually drop their leaves during winter and then have their leaves during the summer rainy season. The winter thorn actually has leaves during winter and then drops the leaves during the wet summer season. So they are extremely important fodder for browsing species, for species that love eating leaves of shrubs and trees during the drier winter month when a lot of the other trees actually drop their leaves. The winter thorn here, also called Anna tree, they're actually a very, very important source of food for the animals. Now in this area over here, we are going to be planting some umbrella thorn trees, Acacia tortilis. And you can see why they're called umbrella thorns, kind of like a little umbrella shape here, relatively flat tops, not just maintained like that by giraffe, but actually just growing like this naturally. They have a very spreading crown. And they are also a very, very important source of food for browsing animals. Along with these, we're also going to plant some knob thorns, Acacia nigrescens. And these trees here, as you can see, also will have pods, also in the Acacia genus. And they're called knob thorns because on their stem, even though we can't really see it here, we can't zoom in either, but on their stem they actually have little knobs, little prickles that are on the stem there, kind of gives it a prickly appearance. When they're younger, it kind of protects them, but as they get older, those knobs just become big bumps on the tree, not really as effective at keeping animals away, but they're also very, very palatable. Animals love browsing on them, so a really great species to include in our park here. Far to the north, we are going to be placing one of my favorite trees, the African baobab, Adansonia digitata. Oh, and there's a nice little baobab forest right over here. We're also going to be placing some to the south here. They generally don't occur in great numbers, but you will find them especially in drier areas, along little hills, and so you will also very often find them. Although you can't raise the terrain here in this game, we are just going to imagine there is a nice little hill over here, and perhaps over here as well, and a few baobabs growing along it. Now baobabs, you can see their very swollen stem. They do store a lot of water, and elephants love tearing into these trees. They will eat the leaves of lower hanging branches, they will eat the fruit when they've got the opportunity, and then they also will strip the bark off these trees. And the baobab, unlike many trees that actually will die if you ring bark them, elephants can pull the bark of these trees, in some cases basically ring barking them, and the tree will still carry on, still be alive, which is really just amazing. They are perhaps a little bit hampered by the ring barking, but they're not generally killed by it. And then we're also just going to place down a few palm trees here. It says here it's the Ilala palm. The Ilala palm generally don't grow quite as tall as these palms we've got over here. And even though it is called the Ilala palm, and we often talk about palm trees, they're not true trees. True trees, like the winter thorn over here, actually have a proper woody stem, whereas palm trees have a very fibrous stem, not really woody. You can, in some cases, make wooden structures with the palm wood, but it's not the same structure as typical tree wood. So they're not true trees. Now the Ilala palm is often found in flooded areas, so we are mostly going to be placing it along the watercourse here, because occasionally the water would technically overflow into this area, into the lower lying areas, and the Ilala palm here would do very, very well in that environment. And then for a bit of increased diversity of trees, we are going to be placing some leadwood trees as well. Combretum imberbe. They're called leadwood because, well, the wood is extremely tough. Even if the plant dies, very often the skeleton remains behind for many, many years. And then another one of my favorite trees, and one that leopards very often will lie in for some reason, the sausage tree. Very big trees, or can get quite big. Currently you can see kind of reddish dots on them. Those are the flowers. They actually are quite big, and they're pollinated mainly by bats. They have massive pollen grains that will generally be too big for insects to carry around easily, so instead they make use of bats. They are open at night, nice cup shape, lots of nectar in there, and the bats will come and drink the nectar, and then in the process get pollen stuck all over their face, and then pollinate a different sausage tree when it goes to visit that one's flowers. And the second last tree we are going to be placing, Marula. And we're going to be placing a few here and there. We are going to try and establish a nice mixed woodland. Unfortunately, although we are placing a lot of trees at the moment, most of these will die. In SimSafari, well, trees don't generally live very long. Usually, they get outcompeted by the grasses very, very quickly. But we are going to see how this goes as time goes on. Now, the marula tree is, of course, famous for apparently getting animals drunk when they eat the fermented fruit, because while the fruit may ripen on the tree, a lot of them will actually fall down onto the ground where they truly ripen and then ferment a bit. And the story goes in that animals will eat those fermented fruit and in the process get drunk and fall around all over the place. That unfortunately does not happen. It is a fictional event that happens. It was for a very old movie called Beautiful People, made by a South African director. And the animals that you see in the movie, they're falling around after eating the fermented marula fruit, well, those were just animals that were darted. So they were not falling around due to the fermented fruit. Instead, they were falling around because, well, they were tranquilized. And then one last tree we are going to be placing is the bush willow here, another Combretum species. There are some Combretum species that do love growing along river courses. I don't think this is one, but I am going to be placing them mostly in the riparian zone. The zone around rivers and lakes where plants that are dependent on the water will be growing and they will shed their leaves. The leaves will fall into the water, so they are dependent on the presence of the water there for their survival, and they also have an influence on the aquatic ecosystem by providing leaves that are a source of food for a lot of invertebrates living in the water here. And that is it. We are not going to be placing any more plants now. We are going to unpause the game here, which means that a few animals will start popping in and the plants will have a chance to actually grow. So possibly we are going to have a bit more of an open grassland over here, perhaps a mixed woodland up here, and kind of a mixture up here as well. We'll see how things go. Alright, but now we need money. We've spent $71,200. We need to get some money back. So what we are going to do is we're going to start out, always like starting out from the reception there. We're not going to take out any trees that are already present in the camp. We are going to be working around them. And of course, the first thing we are going to be placing down would be some tents, some nice glamping tents. So these tents usually are on some kind of foundation, slightly raised above the ground. Very, very nice tents. Recently, I stayed for the first time in one such tent. It was actually quite enjoyable. It was very hot there where we were, but that was because we went to a very, very hot place. But usually they don't have a bathroom in them, so you've got to walk a little bit to get to the restrooms. And that is exactly what our visitors will have to do, because the ablution block will be right over here. Of course, one also does need some other accommodation as well. We'll place some cottages down here now. And although normally these cottages in real life would have a restroom and a kitchen and things like that as well, we are going to give the visitors staying in them also their separate ablutions. And they don't have to share with the people staying in these tents over here. And then lastly, for those that really want to pay a very, very steep price for staying in our park, we are going to have a nice big lodge set up as well. And they will have a nice balcony looking out over the park. And we also do want to give all the other visitors access to the animals, or to have a look at the animals. And let's say there's a nice waterhole right outside the camp here. We would like them to actually look at the animals there, so we are going to put up 2 blinds as well. The idea then being that people can come and have a look at the animals, whether that be during daytime or nighttime doesn't matter. And I have spent many, many hours in such hides, usually looking for birds. But if you stay in certain areas, like at nighttime, you can see leopards coming to drink. You can see wild dogs coming to drink. You can see brown hyenas as well coming to drink at the watering hole if, you know, they are in the park. Alright, so nice blinds over here. And then we also need 2 other things. We need a dining area, and we are going to have a nice little dining area over here. This will be for people in the tents and for people in the cottages. And then lastly, we do also need to give the people access to the park. And we're going to do that by just setting up a little loop-de-loop over here. And then while they're waiting for their tour, they can have a nice little picnic here under the camel thorn tree over here. We're just going to plant some star lilies all around here. And then also to keep the vehicles from just driving off into our camp, we are just going to put some sour plums all along here. These sour plums actually have quite a nice berry that they produce. It is an edible plant, and it is very, very nice. We also have a few aloes planted along here, because as I said, the AI isn't very good. The drivers do sometimes just drive off the roads and just keep on going. So we don't want them accidentally driving over our visitors here, so we're just going to block off the road with plants. And then we are going to put, I think let's start with 4 vehicles. But you know, this is all good and well. We have got everything we need, but there are no people here. Oh look, there's a person there. Okay, never mind. Oh look, another person has just spawned. The thing is, we don't have any people working here yet. So we need to remedy that. Let's head on over to the village and see how things are going here. So far, the crops have not been trampled. That is great news. The elder says life is better than just survival. Okay, so that's nice. And they're trying to save up for a well. Okay, so to help them, let's actually hire a few people. We have 4 vehicles. Let's hire 6 drivers so that they can, take turns. Each vehicle also needs a scout, and we also want them to rotate a bit so we don't overwork any of our workers. And then attendants, these are the people cleaning the accommodation, the ablutions, those types of things. And then naturalists, just to make some tours really amazing, we're just going to hire. Alright, so we've hired quite a few people now. And now we just sit back and wait for the money to roll in. But while we're doing that, let's have a look here at our park. And there we can actually see our first vehicle driving through the park now. That is absolutely marvelous. The grasses are really spreading. Oh wow, the baobabs are doing much better than they usually do. I'm used to the baobabs just dying out so quickly it's not even funny, but the baobabs seem to be doing very well in this park. Even the knob thorns are doing extremely well. The umbrella thorns not so much, but the marulas, some of them are surviving, some of the leadwood are surviving, and then very importantly, the knob thorn are doing extremely well. Sages have started dispersing a little bit away from the water. That is fine. And of course the grasses, a nice mixed species grassland that we've got here. And just by actually having a lot of plants, we already technically have a 4-star park. That is just amazing. And now we have our first animals actually starting to pop up as well. I did just realize that we don't have a road for the poor ecologist over here to actually drive through. So let's just remedy that, shall we? We do need the ecologist to be able to drive around in the park. And there we go, that is sorted. Alrighty. So, now that we've got our plants sorted, our herbivores are coming in. So we've got quite a few grazers already. We've got Thompson's gazelles over here. Really agile antelope species or gazelle species here. Notice the interesting coloration here. We've got lightish brown on top, then we've got a black line and a white belly. You see the same coloration with springbuck as well. With springbuck we've got in Southern Africa, and then we have the Thompson's gazelle in East Africa. And also Thompson's gazelle has a line running along the face here, which the springbuck also has. So there's this convergent evolution on coming up with the same color scheme, which means that this has to be beneficial to them. And the idea is that, first of all, the white belly here will reflect sunlight. So if they are standing out in the open, it can get very hot, not just from the sun beating down on them. They are, first of all, a lighter color, so that does keep them cooler. But the white belly there, a lot of sunlight doesn't hit them directly, but instead bounces off the ground and hits their belly. And to actually keep cool, that belly is white in color and it reflects, again, a lot of the sunlight that bounces off the ground onto the belly that would heat them up. They just bounce that away and they keep a little bit cooler that way. But why the black line and the brown above and the white below? That is camouflage. Believe it or not, even though they are standing out in the open here, they have a bit of camouflage with those 3 contrasting colors on them. It breaks up the outline of the antelope. And a lot of antelope species have that. We also have the oryx here, which even though they are much bigger, again, notice 3 colorations. We've got lightish brownish grey on top, a black line running along there, and again the white belly, again reflecting sunlight, but again the 3 colors here breaking up the outline. This is disruptive camouflage. It is more difficult for something for a predator or for us as humans to see the antelope with the 3 colors there than if they were just 1 color. Speaking of 1 color, we've got impala here, which although they are not 1 color, they are not 3 colors. They are darker above, lighter below, kind of counter shading we've got there with lighter below and darker above. it does disrupt the outline a little bit, but not as well as the Thompson's gazelle or springbuck would have. So yeah, really amazing. These antelope here, the impala, they most likely would do extremely well because they are what we call mixed feeders. They feed on grasses and trees, so they are grazers and browsers. So if the one food type is more abundant or but better quality, they can feed on that. If it becomes less abundant or poorer quality, they can switch over to the other type of food. And you can see here quite a few herds of impala actually establishing. I have not put any animals in yet. Yet we can see herds of impala over here in our denser woodland as well. In this case, they are feeding on the browse over here. We also have the impala out in the open here on the grasslands. Here they will be feeding more on the grasses. And we also have a herd of impala up here in the baobab woodland as well. In this case, grazing and browsing, so truly mixed feeders up here. So it's actually great that we've got so many impala and another little herd up here, because these impala are what we call a buffer species. They are a common species that are more likely to be caught by the predators. So because they are so abundant, this cheetah over here, let's say this cheetah is hungry. Oh, beautiful, beautiful cat there. And if this cheetah is hungry, because there are so many impala, there's a good chance that it's actually going to go and catch an impala, rather than one of the rarer antelope species. And that may, to some extent, protect the rarer species. But there is also a kind of a drawback to there being so many impala. And that is something known as apparent competition. Now, normal competition, I've talked about that quite often in the Empires of the Undergrowth videos. You will have either scramble competition, which is basically a first come, first served resource use. So whichever animal gets to the grass, for example, first will eat it. Or interference competition, where they actually set up territories and they keep out other individuals of the same species or of other species. But there is another type of competition, and that is the apparent competition, where, for example, the impala over here will be competing to some extent with the warthog over here. Not directly for food, but the more common the impala become, the more food there is for predators, and in this case the cheetah have become 3, okay? And because there are now more predators, they can have a bigger impact on the warthog population. Yes, they are still going to capture more impalas than warthogs, but because there are so many cheetahs, they are probably going to still catch quite a few warthog. So this is apparent competition. An increase in one prey species benefits the predator population, but because that predator population is increasing, it has a negative impact on another prey species. Okay, so the impala here are to some extent negatively impacting some of the other prey species, the warthog in this case perhaps. We'll get back to the predators as well. We'll talk about that probably in our next episode. We'll talk a little bit more about them. I have realized that disasters have actually been switched off. We are going to put disasters on, so we can have locusts, we can have a drought, or we can have fire starting. Ooh, look at this little antelope moving along here, the duiker. The common duiker, Sylvicapra grimmii. Sylvis refers to forest or woodlands, and capra refers to goat or antelope. So it's the goat or the antelope of the forest, because a lot of duiker species actually do occur in forested environments. We've got the blue duiker in southern Africa, extending up all the way to East Africa as well, in forested environments, and lots of other duiker species in forested environments. Some, like the common duiker here, are found in more open areas, but a lot of them actually are in more enclosed environments, forested environments. So this duiker here, very often pronounced duka, but it's actually duiker. Duiker is an Afrikaans word meaning diver, so one who dives. And not that they dive into the water, but when they feel threatened by a predator, they very often just dive into the vegetation and they disappear, woof, like that, gone. Okay, especially if they are in thicket environments. If you don't... Oh, that duiker just got eaten by the leopard. It did not dive into the bushes fast enough. Okay, but there is the leopard. Oh, look at that. This leopard here is actually scent marking. So scratching on a tree, and very often you will find favorite trees of the leopards where they actually, it looks like they're sharpening their claws, but actually they've got glands on their feet, scent glands, and by scratching in there, they do leave nice big grooves there on the tree trunk, but they also leave, along with those grooves, their scent. And other leopards can come and pick up, oh, look, Sarah has been here recently. I probably shouldn't go into her territory. This spot over here is taken. But the duiker there, Unfortunately, it didn't dive quickly enough and it did get eaten by the leopard over there. They are quite small antelope species, really eaten by any of the predators in the area. Ooh, bullfrog. There we go. Ooh. Okay, so they're calling this the African bullfrog. I think this is the only one. Oh, sweet. Okay. This coloration over here is actually not the African bullfrog. The coloration here is actually the giant bullfrog. The sound, that may actually be African bullfrog. I'll have to double check though. The giant bullfrog, which this actually looks like, gives more of a whoop sound. They are big. They are really, really big. They've got toothy projections from their jaws as well. You don't want to be bitten by them. I had a lecturer that was actually bitten by one of these years and years and years ago. So yeah, you don't want to be bitten by them. They will draw blood. Okay, they are big. They're also not the biggest frog in Africa, but they are one of the biggest frogs in Africa. Now, interesting, it does say here that in large numbers, the noise sounds a bit like motorcycles roaring in the distance. And yeah, when they are really breeding during the main breeding season, there will be hundreds or potentially thousands of these frogs gathering together at the water, and they will be breeding in temporary pools. Oh, it's actually a drought. Shame. So what would happen now to the frog is actually it would go underground. It would find a nice muddy patch, it will dig underground, and there it will remain until the drought subsides, until it rains again. And oh look, it became two froggies. Oh, they're breeding. That is so nice to see. One probably came out from underneath the ground here, and now there are two. But anyway, as I was saying, these frogs over here, these bullfrogs, the giant bullfrogs, will actually be breeding in temporary pools, and they go from egg to little frog in about 4 weeks, a very, very short span of time. Okay, so very quickly they actually go from little egg to actual little froglet. But while they are developing, the male actually stays behind with the eggs and the little tadpoles, and he will protect them against predators. And also, if they, for example, are in a little puddle and that puddle starts drying out, the male bullfrog actually digs a furrow and he tries to shepherd the babies, the little tadpoles, to a bigger water body to keep them safe so they don't actually die. And there's a nice parental care there with the giant bullfrogs, which I just think is amazing. Unfortunately, they are threatened because, well, they are eaten, but also development in the areas where they do occur, drainage of wetlands where they used to breed in, all those types of horrible things have happened. Alright, now, with the drought conditions now, the grasses most likely will suffer a bit. There are some trees definitely dying. You can see quite a few knobthorn trees have died. Some of them actually are still doing surprisingly well and still alive. This really is a knobthorn thicket. I'm very pleasantly surprised by that. But when it does rain again, the grasses will just bounce back so quickly. Many of them at this time, with the drought conditions, will have stored some water and nutrients in their underground storage organs, in their roots and in their underground stems, their rhizomes, and when it does rain, they just regrow. A lot of them also will just survive as seeds. Okay, so when they have flowered, they set a lot of seeds. A lot of those seeds will then be eaten by birds and by rodents, but some of those seeds will remain behind. And when the drought subsides and it starts raining, well, then you will have those seeds germinating and everything is good. The vegetation recovers then. Okay, now the ecologist lady here says this park needs some water and quickly. We're not going to do that. You know, there's a reason for that. First of all, we do have quite a bit of water still left. But secondly, in the Kruger National Park, for example, artificial water holes have had some horrible unforeseen consequences, where the provision of water through artificial watering holes has allowed the herbivores, especially wildebeest and zebra, to move into the drier parts of the park. And those drier parts of the park were actually home to antelopes such as the rowan and the sable, like this one we've got over here. Magnificent antelope. They were quite common in the drier northern parts of the Kruger National Park. But unfortunately, as artificial watering holes were put up in the northern parts, wildebeest and zebra started moving in. And as I was talking about earlier, apparent competition, that happened, where the abundance of wildebeest and zebra resulted in lions moving into the area. There we go, there is a lion in fact over there. And because of the increase in predator numbers in the northern parts of the Kruger National Park, they did feed on the sable and the rowan and the tsessebe, some of the rarer antelope species, and they largely disappeared. They're actually very, very rare in the Kruger National Park now, and that is mainly due to the placement of artificial watering holes. So we're not going to do that. We refuse to do that. Now something is happening. We've got savanna hares here. 19 of them at the moment. We're going to keep a close eye on them because I think they just increase in number. Yeah, there we go, 27, just like that. Okay, so we are going to have to keep an eye on them. They are going to increase in number, and we are going to have to most likely introduce some vultures and martial eagles and stuff like that to bring their numbers down. We'll see whether their numbers are automatically controlled. When they increase, the predator numbers may increase. Maybe that happens. Alright, we'll see in a bit. In the campsite here, the manager is very happy. The visitors are happy. She's happy. Everyone is happy. In terms of money, well, we have made more money than we spent. And in fact, last year we also made quite a bit of money. We made more money than we spent. And that is just absolutely marvelous. Okay, so yes, we did spend a lot of money, but it is going to be slowly but surely coming in. And that is just absolutely marvelous. Now, before we end though, we do have a troop of savanna baboons over here. We've got a nice troop of baboons, 5 of them at the moment. They would be, eaten by leopards and other predators. Very good color vision though, so they are able to actually spot predators quite nicely. And big males, big males have got massive canines. You do not want to mess with them. They will tear into your flesh, and I have seen photos of dogs and even leopards and predators that have been torn to pieces by baboons. They are not to be trifled with. Oh my word, we have another drought that hit. If this does continue, if we have drought after drought after drought, we most likely will have to place some water. But as it stands now, we still have a bit of water in this section. Oh, shame, there's a crocodile in this little drying up pond over here. Shame. Okay, we've got a pond over here. We've got some water points over here. And we still have most of this central northern lake system still holding water. So we're not going to put in artificial water yet. We're going to see how it goes. Okay, what has happened, however, is that the shallower parts of this lake system here have dried up, and now there is a bit of a land bridge that has formed between this section and this section. Animals and plants can now move more freely between these two areas. Okay, so it's going to be interesting to see what happens as time goes on. Now, there is no way for water to actually increase in this game. You have to put it in yourself. The droughts will remove the water, but there's no way to get water without you actually placing it. Okay, so we are most likely at some point going to start running out of water, and then we will spend money and we will place water, but not yet. Right, now, I think this is a good spot to end for today, everybody. So thank you very much for tuning in to this classic game, SimSafari, as we are playing it. And I will be back again next week, Friday, with another episode of SimSafari. So come and join me then to see how the park progresses and to see whether we can get to 5 stars. Until then, stay safe, everybody, and I will see you all again soon. Cheers!